El Sheikh Abada is a monumental site that lies 45 kilometers south in El Minya Governorate. It's a great site that comprises lots of monuments, artifacts and buildings, including this giant building, a temple which belonged to King Ramesses II, who ruled Egypt during the New Kingdom. Ramesses II is very well known to have buildings all over the place. You can't find a single grand monumental site in Egypt without having a monument that belonged to King Ramesses II in it. For example, here you have this grand temple, which used to have a facade, a hypostyle hall and a sanctuary. The ruins of the temple are all around me, and you can see his name written clearly in sunk relief on that pillar behind me, which says Sa-Ra, King Ramesso. Malawi Center is one of 9 centers of which El Minya Governorate is composed. It lies 45 kilometers south of El Minya Center, which is the capital of the governorate and one of the most important monumental sites in Egypt, for it was a theatrical ground of the pharaonic and Greek-Roman civilizations. The village of El Sheikh Abada, or the priest called Abada, lies 7 kilometers northeast of Malawi. It's known in the Greek texts by the name of Antinopolis, and the name has a story. In 130 AD, the Roman Emperor Hadrian mourned his best friend Antinois, who drowned in the Nile. Accordingly, he built him several memorial buildings. One of them is this city, and the other famous one is the Chapel of Philae Temple. In Aswan, there is a famous monumental site called Philae Temples. It's an island in the Nile, 4 kilometers south of the Aswan Dam, and lying in between it and the High Dam. Is composed of a group of pink granite rocks known at the time of King Nectanebo I in the Egyptian texts as Per-i-Erek, meaning the end or the final line, pointing to the fact that it lies as a separate line between the north and the south of the Nile Valley. The name was changed in the Coptic language as Pilag and in Greek as Philae. After building Aswan Dam, the monuments of Philae, called Isis temples, were subjected to be submerged under the water repeatedly after each flood. When Egypt decided to build the High Dam, it became clear that the collection of Philae, as well as the rest of the Nubian monuments, will sink totally. That's when Egypt called the UNESCO to save these monuments, including the groups of Isis temples in Philae. After many studies, it was decided to move them to the nearby Angelica Island. The collection of the monumental buildings are 14 in number. One of them is Hadrian Chapel. Hadrian Chapel was built in the 2nd century as a memorial to Antinois, Hadrian's friend, who drowned. It's a gate to the Nile with a nearby Nilometer, and it has another special importance. On the inner walls of the chapel, the last Coptic handwriting of the ancient Egyptian language were recorded. They date to the 7th century AD, which proves how strong and popular Isis was and how she had a superpower and dominated all the ancient Egyptian creeds in the late Greek-Roman period. The Mamizi is the birth chapel that is to be found in any temple in Egypt where there is a mother goddess and her child. Naturally, it's found here in Isis temple, who is a famous goddess of motherhood in her own mythology of her triad, which is composed of herself, her husband Osiris, and her baby Horus. In front of the main building is an aisle, which ceiling is based on 4 columns, followed by 2 chambers, then a sanctuary. On 3 sides of the Mamizi stretches a row of beautiful granite columns with floral composite capitals, topped by apexes of musical instruments carrying Hathoric heads. All the walls and the screen walls between the columns are decorated with scenes of Ptolemy VI, or the 7th or the 11th, and Emperor Tiberius, in the presence of several gods. The reliefs inside the inner chambers tell the story of the birth of Horus here, being a convenient place for his birth, witnessed by a group of gods in the marshes of Papyrus. After his birth, he stands there, wearing the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. The rest of the scenes explain the story of the birth of Horus and his unusual childhood, which was full of strife and heroism. The monastery and church of Abahur lies 4 kilometers east to El-Minya city on the east bank of the Nile. It comprises an antique church that's located within the new church of Abahur. Christianity thrived in Egypt, especially in the Coptic era, in its early stages, and that's resulted in building many churches all over Egypt, especially in Middle Egypt, and in the location of the sacred journey of the sacred family. El-Minya Governorate is one of 29 governorates in the land of Egypt, and it's the capital of north of Upper Egypt region, which includes El-Minya and Beni Suef and El Fayum. It stretches along the Nile for a distance of 135 kilometers and an average width of 18 kilometers. It lies in the midst between Upper and Lower Egypt. The touristic fame of El-Minya reached a unique and great level and is well earned by the touristic sites and the monumental areas that gathers 5 historical periods that joins between the greatness of the past and the achievements of the present. In addition to very unique geographical characteristics that has all the factors of the environment of the countryside and the desert ambience. Out of El-Minya, the first call for the unity of God was launched by the hands of King Akhenaton. All these factors make El-Minya earn the title of the Bride of Upper Egypt. The Christian monuments in El-Minya are spread all across the governorate and belong to many decades through which Christianity passed ever since it started as a new religion on the hands of Saint Mark, who preached it in Alexandria city in 65 AD. In fact, Christian religion as it's known today in the whole world had basically established its grounds on Egyptian soil, confirmed by Athenius, who chose the Bible that's used today, and added to it the Old Testament after burning thousands of Bibles. There are almost 4 or 5 rock tombs in the Qom al-Ahmar monumental area in Al-Minya. It belongs to Nefer Sekheru, who was a very important character in the 18th or the 19th dynasty, the New Kingdom era. He used to be a royal scribe. That's why he could have a rock tomb here in this important place in Al-Qom al-Ahmar. So when you come to visit Zawiyat Sultan or Al-Qom al-Ahmar, make sure that you pass by the tomb of Nefer Sekheru. The Red Hill, or Al-Qom al-Ahmar, was an ancient city gaining its fame from the old capital of the 16th nome called Hebnu. The city was surrounded with a wall that was built of mud bricks, some parts of which still exist and show the massive space of land it occupied. Here, there used to be factories of pottery, which belonged to several periods of the ancient Egyptian history and till the Greek-Roman period. That fact simply means that the billions of pottery here are considered treasures that testify to the periods and events with which this monumental area passed throughout the Egyptian history, and is revealing more secrets every day. There is a Mi'zana, or a watching tower, that was built on top of the mountain. It was built in the Fatimid era 1,000 years ago as a guarding point to observe the ships and the boats passing by the city in the Nile. Thus it's called the observatory. Here there are over 100 burial shafts, either rounded or rectangular, from the pharaonic period, and are still waiting to be excavated. Goddess Sekhmet was called the Great Sekhmet, the Lady of the Two Lands, or Sekhmetat Nebet-Tawi. The two lands are the north and the south of Egypt. The word Sekhmet means the powerful, and it coincides with the nature of the goddess in her vicious and vengeful nature. This goddess appears in the form of a lioness, or a female with the head of the lioness. Her head is topped with a sun disk and the cobra and the wig. Sekhmet wears a tight dress, colored mostly in red. This reflects her nature, so she was called the Lady of the Red Stripes, which may indicate her nature as a goddess of Lower Egypt, or maybe a fighter goddess. In spite of the fact that Memphis is the center of her main cult, as she was worshipped as a member of the triad of Memphis with Ptah and Nefertum, yet she enjoyed having many temples in many other places. She owns a chapel in Abu Sir and had appeared in many of the reliefs of the temples of the Greek-Roman period. Queen Hatshepsut has built a temple for Sekhmet in Al-Minya Governorate, and it is said that it is the one dedicated to Bakhet, who is also represented as a lioness and worshipped in Middle Egypt, and connected with royalty and some deities. She was mentioned in the coffin's texts as the night hunter with the sharp claws. The difference between her and Sekhmet is that she was worshipped only within the area surrounding it in Bani Hassan in Al-Minya. There is a temple consecrated for her in her image of Sekhmet Hathor in Qom al-Hisn in the Western Delta. Many of the segments of texts and spells point that she had enjoyed an important role in curing with magic, being a healing goddess whose name is the Powerful. The idea of duplicity represented an important core in the formation of the ancient Egyptian religious beliefs and his interpretation of existence. The most standing out example of this dualism is the division of two great kingdoms in the north and the south, and the constant confirmation of that through the titles and the royal crowns in which the duplicity appeared clearly, in addition to the administrative system that's built on the same idea, and the vision of the Egyptian to the existence and the non-existence, and the world of living and the afterlife, and all the concepts and aspects in which the idea of duality played an important role. The Sabdet star was a female and was called the bringer of the flood. By time, she was connected with Isis, so she's pictured on a boat floating in the sky. In later periods, she was represented as a sitting cow with a star between her horns, among the scenes of the sealing of Dendera. Hence, the deceased king was called the son of Cyrus, for Isis is the mother of Horus. The ancient Egyptian astronomers calculated the time between each clear appearance of Sabdet and found it 365 days, which included 12 lunar months and fractions that didn't make a half month. So they completed the number of the days of each lunar month to be 30 days, and they were left with 5 days to be festival days. As for the seasons of the year, they were divided into 3. The first season is the Akhet season, which is the flood season. It starts from the middle of July and lasts till the middle of November. After the water which flooded the land and fertilized it resides, seeds are planted. It's possible that the word Akhet, which means the horizon, was chosen to name this season because the planting resembles the sun rising from the horizon. The flood season comprises 4 months. They are Tahut, Ba'ufi, Adhir or Hathor, and Kohyak or Kilhet.